This year marks the 50th anniversary of the restoration of China's lawful United Nations seat. China was one of the architects of the United Nations, and it was the first UN Charter signatory in San Francisco in 1945. But it was only on October the 25th, 1971, at its 26th session, did the United Nations General Assembly adopt Resolution 2758 with an overwhelming majority. It restored all lawful rights of the People's Republic of China in the UN and recognized its representatives as the only legitimate UN representatives of China. Over the past 50 years, the world has changed a lot, as China has gone through deep economic and social transformation. Earlier, I spoke to Siddharth Chatterjee, the United Nations resident coordinator in China. He shared his thoughts on this 50 years relationship between China and the United Nations, and many new developments in China over the past 5 decades. Let's listen in. Thinking about, it's already 50 years, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So much change in terms of China's status in the world, China's working with the UN and the UN as well.
You know, here is a country which struggled with poverty not too long ago. Its per capita GDP was at about $180 back in 1979. Today, the per capita GDP of China has grown to $12,000, and we expect it to go to about $25,000 by 2025. This is within 4 decades.
It looks like just numbers, but it's dramatic change.
No, it's dramatic. If a person born in 1979, basically today this person is well off.
Very true.
Is well off compared to where his or her parents were. So it's a dramatic transformation. Not just that, it lifted over 750 million people out of poverty. Now, that happening in a lifetime is also quite remarkable. Of course, this year, 2021, is significant because it's the 50th year of China's return to the UN. It is my first year as the United Nations resident coordinator to China. It's a privilege to be here at this time, at this moment. So when you're seeing this festive atmosphere around, it also shows that the United Nations family, which is composed of both international and national staff, have been part of this journey with China. We are very much part of China's social fabric, given the fact that the UN also established its presence here in 1979. It was a net aid provider to China. Today, China has reversed that and has become a net aid provider to many other developing countries in the world and returning that favor. But the UN has been part of this journey and has seen China's rise through its trials and tribulations, and seeing it today where it's become a global voice for multilateralism.
So it seems that this reflection of 50 years could help us know much better about where we come from.
Exactly.
But where are we going?
Yeah.
That's another question, isn't it?
You know, China's great advantage is its deep history. It's 5,000 years of history, and that history comes with a lot of wisdom and a lot of determination. So we have to look at it from what worked and what did not work. Now, China's dramatic rise has also been at a cost. It's been at a cost to the environment, and that is why China is doing a course correction. That is why President Xi announced that China will go towards carbon peaking by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060. I commend the statement. I think that takes a big amount of courage as well. Not easy, because this would mean really re-engineering the juggernaut of China's industrial might towards the green pathway, which is the future.
It's a totally different mindset.
It is a mindset.
Totally different mechanism,
Exactly.
Totally different platforms.
Exactly.
So a lot of differences.
Absolutely. Again, at the 76th session, your president announced that China will not finance any more coal-fired plants.
Overseas.
Important statement to make, because what it will do, it will fast track the innovation and the technology that we need to look at renewables as a bridge to be able to overcome the energy deficit we will see from fossil fuels. Now, this needs 3 things, which I'm seeing in China. First is dramatic political will. It is that same political will that brought China from a $180 per capita to a 12,000 per capita. It is the same political will that has made China or lifted China out of poverty. But it's also the right public policies. Now, without the public policies accompanying the political will, it's not going to happen. So I would say that across the spectrum of Chinese governance, something has worked that has made this liftoff possible. And last is partnerships. You know, as John Donne said, no man is an island, every man is a piece of the continent. We are interconnected. The UN working in lockstep with China, the state-owned enterprises, the private sector, foundations, the people, and governments coming together. So I think this relationship, which allows the cross-pollination of ideas, of education, of technology to take place, has been a huge asset. And China has been pragmatic.
You have been, the UN has been a great partner with China throughout this 5 decades of experiments. Many of these experiments are unprecedented given the size of this country and the diversity of this people, also the historical background. So at this point, what do you see, Sid, is the biggest experiment that China is doing? It seems that you're talking about carbon and sustainable development. What would this country, after tests and tribulations, will be able to contribute to the rest of the world? Are they not replicable, but are they be nutritious to the others?
The world has to decarbonize. That's the bottom line. Everybody is talking about the crucial nature of decarbonizing because the UN Secretary General has said categorically, my boss, Antonio Guterres, that we are in a climate emergency. I see China is stepping up. I see China is actually becoming a leader in the space of renewable energy. China's role comes with a huge amount of responsibility in this global atmosphere where the climate crisis is affecting everybody. It is affecting China as much as it is affecting the US, it is affecting Europe, it's affecting all parts of the world. The floods we've seen in China, the forest fires we've seen in the US are unprecedented. So we are living in unprecedented times, but we are also living in a moment of unprecedented opportunities. Who would have ever thought that in 4 decades a country could go from absolute abject poverty to lifting everybody out of abject poverty? Who would have ever thought that China would actually one day become the engine room of global manufacturing hub? Who would have ever thought that China would have been able to, with such speed and efficacy, with a population of 1.4 billion, be able to actually bend the curve of the COVID-19 pandemic? With this population size, if China can do it, my feeling is every other country, every other developing world can do it. The issue is, how can we, as the United Nations family, be able to take the best practices of China, take the knowledge and the experiences from China, so that those countries don't also end up making any mistakes, but are able to embrace all the right pathways. And there are 3 things that will determine this. First is the big data. Second is technology. Third is innovation. Now, supposing China had access to all this in 1980, let's take that as the starting point. China probably would have got to where it is by the year 2000.
How other factors from outside this place, out of your reach, would actually have an impact on your work, on your reach here? That's what I see as the biggest challenge. Sid, you work very hard. How would you be able to control all of those factors that are not within your grasp?
But that is why that was why the United Nations was created. That is what the Charter of the United Nations is all about, is to be that bridge builder, regardless of, like I said, regardless of the geopolitics. My role is to stay faithful to the Charter. My role is to stay absolutely in lockstep with the aspiration that the Secretary General has of his resident coordinator, as well as the global development aspirations, plus the aspirations of the country. China has a 14th five-year plan. I have told the UN country team we are fully aligned, making sure that our cooperation framework works seamlessly. We can't be working at odds with each other.
I would assume in your position, there could be chances for bigger frustrations. How would you be able to smooth up these frustrations? And as you always, energetically throwing yourself back to work. This to me is something amazing.
You know, Tian Wei, that is what the United Nations is all about. We are an international civil servant. We don't come here with any agendas, our hope, we are judged by the way in which our host government, where we are hosted, think of us. We are judged by how we've been able to transform lives and livelihoods. We are judged that have we been able to deliver as one in terms of making sure that China succeeds, because China's success is also the success of the UN. My hope is to be able to share that knowledge, which I do. You know, I write a lot, I put in a lot of editorials and I do a lot of interviews. It is important to talk about a country which has come from virtually nowhere into becoming the second largest economy in the world, where it has allowed human development to progress, because you know, poverty is very multidimensional. That is why I talked about the importance of the 14th five-year plan and why we have to reduce inequalities. We have to reduce urban-rural divide. It's a good time to look at what kind of things we can do now, because whatever we do now may actually have an impact in other parts of the world too.
I was looking at the picture taken 50 years ago when Mr. Qiao Guanhua, the China representative to the UN when China resumed its UN seat, was laughing heartedly. And now, when we think about what has changed, people are mainly looking at how much changes have taken place in China. So it's amazing about how the world tried to accept China, embrace China again 50 years ago, vis-a-vis the world now is looking China with both curiosity and enormous interest for one purpose or another. I see this dramatic change very interesting to me as a journalist. How do you see that?
You know, Tian Wei, the nature of geopolitics is always very turbulent. It changes from time to time. But don't forget, even during the Cold War, the world was able to eradicate smallpox. Cooperation can still happen. Dialogue can still happen, despite our differences, which is where the basic principle of the United Nations is. And we must be able to provide that platform for it to happen. That is why the 76th General Assembly happened. President Xi gave a brilliant speech at the UN General Assembly, and you know, the whole message on stopping new coal-fired power plants and focusing on low-carbon development was such a welcome thing. I believe there are those platforms which are available there for global leaders to come together, both physically or digitally. We as a global community, the UN system, which is representative of all the member states, have to be prepared. And whether this becomes a message of where the future collaboration needs to be. So to me, it's quite clear: the climate, our public health, prevention of conflicts, making sure that inequalities both within countries and between countries is minimized. Therefore, the whole principle of what is called the shared prosperity of mankind is very relevant. It actually responds to the 17 goals of the Sustainable Development Goals. As the resident coordinator here, I'm committed to making sure that we deliver on all those goals, and that itself becomes a way through which all the differences of humanity could actually be bridged. That's my vision to this.
You know, on the 50th anniversary of China resuming the seat at the UN, you are hosting a poetry party. I'm sure there's something about what you're thinking right now. It's even beyond just documents and speeches. So, you know, at this historical moment as the UN resident coordinator, your role, your thoughts.
When I watch a country which has been able to move in that trajectory, it inspires me. It gives me hope. It gives me the feeling that many other countries can actually emulate the model here and be able to fast track its development trajectory, because ultimately we are a human species. We are an intelligent species. Ours is about solidarity and compassion. Moonrise, a hymn to the United Nations and China at 50. An interpolation of W.H. Auden and Suchet. Happy birthday, United Nations, a 76-year history of triumphs and tribulations. China has risen like a phoenix rising from the ashes of pain and indignation. Its 5,000-year civilization, a pillar of its wisdom and determination. The nation has set forth, freeing her people from the shackles of poverty, a country united and determined to advance prosperity. embracing human development and humanity. As we mark 50 years this month of China's return to its lawful seat at the United Nations, we rejoice a golden jubilee. May we all be blessed with peace and longevity, to sharing the beauty of the moon in compassion and solidarity.